Brigitte, and today we're going to be sewing on buttons. There are 3 different kinds of buttons that you can sew on. We have shank buttons, 2-hole, and 4-hole buttons. So let's get started. The first and most important thing that you need are going to be your tools for working. You will need a hand sewing needle, your button of course, scissors or snippers to cut thread, and of course your all-purpose thread. Alright, so we're going to start by sewing on our 2-hole button. I have a pin, my button, and a needle which has already been threaded. I just have a double knot on the end, and the thread has been doubled up to give us extra strength. So we'll move the pin off to the side for now, along with the button. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to sew my button on right onto these crosshairs here, onto those fold lines, as you can see. I'm going to take my needle and go right into the center so that our knot is going to be on the right side of our fabric. All right, and as we come up on the other side, we're looking at the wrong side of the fabric now. We're going to take our pin and make a very tiny stitch. Now it's important while you're sewing, you keep a very small area of your stitches so that your button's nice and clean and it won't be prone to tangles. All right, now we're gonna take on our button because we've gone down and up once, and we'll start sewing on the button. I'm gonna go through the first hole and then down through the second. And as I'm pulling this tight, I'm gonna make sure that our thread doesn't get tangled up. Because on a button this big, that's really easy. All right, so I'm gonna go down through the area that we've been sewing on. Yep, that's pretty tight. And I'm gonna make sure this isn't going to tangle up. Yes, that's pretty easy to happen. Great. And so before I pull it all the way tight, I'm gonna take my pin. We've been going from right to left. I'm gonna take my pin and go through the area in which we've been sewing. Now I do this so that it leaves us a little space for us to create a shank out of thread. That'll help us keep the button really stable and secure, and it'll also help to button it when you're all ready to wear it. All right, so we're gonna pull that even tighter. Great, and that pin's gonna keep us from pulling it all the way tight against the fabric. So I'm gonna go back to the other side. That's looking pretty nice. I'm gonna poke my needle through, up through the good side of the fabric, up through the right hole. There you are. And I'm gonna pull our thread nice and taut, and then down through the left side, through the fabric. And before I pull the needle all the way through, I'm checking on the wrong side of the fabric to make sure that our sewing area is nice and tight, and it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the needle all the way through. Great, so on a button this big, I am going to opt to pull our thread through 3 times. That'll give us a lot of security, especially when the thread is doubled up. So I'm pushing through the bottom of the fabric, through the top, up through the button. One last time, down through the left side, through the top of the fabric, and I'm checking to make sure that the needle's going in. And yep, that's pretty close. So go ahead and pull that through. Now the next step's going to be a little different. We're going to push our needle from the wrong side of the fabric, where our stitches are nice and tight, up through the top side of the fabric, but we're not gonna go through the hole. Go ahead and pull your needle through. Great. And at this point, we can remove our pin. Its purpose has been served. And to create the shank out of thread, we're going to wrap our thread around 1, 2, 3, at least 3 times, but I usually go around 4 times to make it nice and secure, so you can see that our thread has wrapped around the base of where we've been stitching through. And that's why it's important to keep those stitches as tight as we can. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and push your needle through the shank and go ahead and create a knot. So we have a little loop. We'll pull our needle through the loop. There we are. Pulling nice and slowly so it doesn't tangle. We'll do that one more time. Yep. And then we'll go ahead and snip the ends. And that's it. Let's go ahead and look at the other side. That's a nice tight stitch. All right, and that's it, a 2-hole button. So the process of sewing on a 4-hole button is more or less the same as sewing on a 2-hole, and the only difference is you have twice as many holes. Now there's a variety of different ways in which you can sew on a 4-hole button, but I'm gonna do the most basic and go crisscross over the holes. Let's get started. There you have it, a 4-hole button. So shank buttons are a little different in that they usually have a flat top and they already have the shank built into the back, so we won't have to create one out of thread. Alrighty, so let's get started. So I again have my needle already threaded, double threaded. I'll go in from the back like before, or in through the front and up through the back with the knot on the right side of the fabric, pulling nice and tight. Now for this one, we do not need the pin to give us space. We're gonna be tying this guy on nice and tight. And there's only one hole to go through. You should just go up and in, back through the front, to the back, pulling it nice and tight, making sure our threads aren't tangled, which they are a little bit. Let's fix that. There we go. Pulling nice and tight again. Up through the back, to the front, keeping our stitches nice and tight, very close together through the hole, pulling through, back into our little stitch, through the back, pulling through. And then one last time through the back. To the front. Pulling our needle through. And we are going to wrap our thread around the bottom. Again, we don't need to create the shank this time. This is just for stability. So you're already gonna have a pretty easy time buttoning up your coat or buttoning up a blouse with a shank button. But we're gonna keep our threads together here so that it's harder to come undone. Creating a knot, just like before. One more time. Pulling through the loop. Snipping our threads. And that's all there is to it. All 3 different kinds of buttons. And you're set. You're ready to go. There are 3 different types of buttons. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you went really quick.